programs, and we have a repeat guest on our show today. It's my pleasure to introduce Don Smith. Don is a retired engineer, and I think maybe before we go too far into the program, you were telling me that you retired, you sort of left the railroad business and went on to another life because of the way things were changing. We might talk about that a little bit, but just in case people didn't see you on another show that you were on with us, a little bit about your personal history concerning the railroad.
My personal history, Dave, as a lot of young boys, you know, railroading is something that you want to get into. You want to get in because you enjoy it. Most times during Christmas, we had trains for Christmas, and, you know, and you had your friends and neighbors in. And some of those friends and neighbors today can relate back to the older days, how much we enjoyed that bit of railroading. Brought up in a community, of course, you know, you live and die for railroading.
Did you start here in Commonwealth?
I did. I started here in Corner Brook, and as I mentioned before, you had to work your way up, of course, to be an engineer. And in 1969, for some unknown reason, you missed the railroad steam engines. I did. I really did miss them. And then when the passenger trains finished, you missed that. So what was left? Sitting on a diesel locomotive and having a shiny rear end. That's what they used to call us.
So the sort of the charisma had gone out of it.
In other words, how can you tell a fireman on a diesel locomotive? And that was in 1969. I went on further to field in the life insurance industry. I was a life underwriter with the Canada Life Insurance Company, and I certainly enjoyed that. I always enjoyed doing something to help others, and I found that the insurance business gave you that feeling. And from there on, in 1980, 85, somewhere around there, I guess I retired.
But what is it about railroaders and railroading that seems to get into people's blood? I mean, it's something that people refuse to give up. I mean, the retired guys, you see the guys now up in Hummermouth with that station that you've got refurbished. They've got the train set inside. I mean, you just can't let it go.
I dream about it every night. Still do. Dream about the old persons are gone, long gone. They're back to life. Wake up in the morning sometime, I wonder what's happening. And, you know, there's something in it, the railroading. There's something in it, sir, that exerts the mind and the body.
I've seen TV documentaries where people travel all over the world to see some of the old trains that are still left in existence because it's in their blood.
We had one of the best. I mean, the only trains today are in Switzerland, I believe, that has the white linen and the silver, and we had all of that, you know, and it was fantastic when you walk into that diner on a Sunday afternoon and see those tables set up so beautifully. And now, you know, other than that, there's nowhere you can find that anymore, unless you're aboard the Britannia or a Royal Yacht. And, you know, it's so much to show, and there's so much that's gone, and we know that'll never come back.
Now, we've been very fortunate because a lot of you people, you managed to keep so many things. We've got some things here that we're going to talk about, and you brought along some more photographs. And it's really great because it gives the younger people, and when I say younger people, I'm talking ages anywhere from 15 to 25 and 30 that haven't seen these photographs before. And I know I've been learning. I grew up all my life here in Corner Brook, most of it by the railway track, and had an affinity with the trains and a love for them and so on. But I've seen a lot of things and discovered a lot of things I didn't know before. So thank heavens that you've managed to save all this stuff, and you're around to tell us about it.
Yeah, it's too bad we didn't save more, because the operations of railroading, we're there every day, it doesn't seem to be so complicated as it is for people riding on trains. Lots of things you don't know. How does a train operate? You only have a one track running from Fort Abbas to St. John's. And people will say, well, if the train coming the other way, how do you pass each other?
Yeah, right. And try to explain to somebody the difference in the gauge. You know,
the narrow gauge and the wide gauge. I had an engineer, a good friend of mine, Kevin Byrne, and we had our superintendent of motor power. He was from Quebec, just shortly after Confederation, and he came up to Steamer Crossing. He said, "I'm going to ride down to Corner Brook with you in the cab." So Kevin said, "You're welcome, sir. Come up and sit over there with the fireman." And I moved ahead a little bit to give him a little bit of room. And It was a steam engine, and of course coming downhill from Cook's Brook down to Curling, you didn't have to shovel too much coal then, it was all downhill, and I moved ahead a little bit. And in certain parts of Cook Brook, as you come down and you look out through your window, you see nothing only the brook. You don't even see the ties. And I could tell he was nervous. And Kevin, you know, she was hitting some of those curves pretty hard, a narrow gauge. So he thanked us when we got off the corner, but he said, you never worry. I'll never be aboard your locomotive again. and that part of the run for sure.
But you guys, you took stuff like that in stride, though.
I didn't mind that at all, you know, and years, and those days when we had no speedometers. You had to adjust your speed in many ways.
You judged? Between
the telegraph poles, and you were timed it that way, and there's certain other ways, and you had so long, and coming over the same routes.
Yeah.
You know over the curves and where the bad places are. You know, so
you knew what turns that you had to slow down for,
and you were always on guard. You're always, especially after heavy rainstorms or snow cuts, wintertime, or rocks falling, you're on guard because you know where you may find those things, and always be prepared.
Now you mentioned something to me about the difference between the whole steam locomotive and the diesels. What was so special about a steam locomotive?
As us, was special, especially as firemen. You had a job to do. You had to get steam. And, you know, in order to get steam, you had to keep coal in your fire. So our one and only piece of equipment that we couldn't live without was our shovel. Without the shovel, a fireman was in trouble. And, you know, we get, especially during the latter part of the war, you got the slack, dusty coal from Sydney, and there wasn't good coal. Welsh coal from Wales, and American coal was always good for steaming engines. But the coal in Sydney wasn't. It was dusty, and you couldn't get a good head of steam with it. That's the hardest time we had to work. The other coals was different. It burnt different. It gave a better fire in your firebox, and the whole result of it all, of course, is a good head of steam.
Well, who would have thought that there was a difference in the coal? I mean, I always thought coal was coal, and that was it, right?
I never ran on the roads in wartime, but they tell me, especially in wintertime, you're going west, and you've got this old dirty, clinky coal, and you can't get no steam. And when you get to St. Andrews, it was an emergency, a regular rule then, that you didn't open the firebox door between St. Andrews and Cape Ray. Because if you did, you lit up the whole sky. All the lights in the trains were turned off. The fireman didn't open his box because there could be a submarine out there ready to slap a torpedo. And you couldn't do a thing until you get back into Cape Ray and on the hills and away from the main water link.
Hey, the stories.
So that's some of the stories that we get from their older people. And it's too bad we didn't get more tapes from those guys, because they can tell you real good stories for sure.
Well, like I say, I'm just glad that we've been able to save some of them, and you and your compadres that have come in here, we've had some pretty good talkers, and we've gotten some pretty good photographs in that as well. Yeah. Let's get to one of these pieces that you brought in today. I'll hold this up for the camera, and you can describe what this is, and we'll talk about it a little, because you were telling me that of all the things that we've had on, we've never talked about this particular thing. What is it?
Well, that's the days when we used the telegraph key. The phones weren't into being at that time. And I happened to have that. My brother was rooting around, and somewhere, I suppose, in the old homestead, following things there, he came across this, and he said, well, it has to be done. And it goes to show that trains have to have rules and regulations other than a timetable to operate by.
Yeah, because this is 1951 here, so just to give an idea of the date.
They have to have train orders. We call them train orders, and they're issued from the main train dispatching office in Bishop's Falls at this time. And that would be issued to number 2 at Hammermouth Station. And this was a train order that was issued to her. That was a first-class train leaving Bishop Falls, and she had her times to each station along the way. But if you move it up a little bit, Dave, I can show you where the dispatcher, Max Snow, that's his initials. Connolly was Leo Connolly was the operator. And when Leo copied that order down, he had to repeat it, word for word, as it was given to him from the dispatcher, to make sure there was no errors in it. And after that was on, of course, the time, 5:30, is it?
Yeah, I think so.
5:53. 5:53 p.m. My hours are still good.
Yeah.
That was the time that the order was repeated, and then you had to have the conductor, to Harold Keeping, to sign the order, and then it was completed at 6:01 p.m., and the train was number 2, and the engineer was Gus Penny from Hummermouth.
Mm-hmm. Now, this sort of relates to a couple of questions I've asked some of the other guests. Because there was no communication like we have now with cell phones and walkie-talkies and that sort of thing, you had to stick by the schedule, didn't you? Because, I mean, you would run into another train coming in the opposite direction on the same set of tracks. So you were saying to me, people say, well, how did you pass by one another and so on? I mean, it was all written in the scheme of
all East Coast, Eastern trains and Northern trains had the right-of-way over all other trains, without exception of a special train order to make it any different.
Mm-hmm. Can you ever think of any time when something like that got fooled up and it caused problems?
Not to my knowledge. I think we were very fortunate in the Newfoundland Railway that not have had any serious accidents due to anything like this. You know, a lot of little mishaps happened that none of us ever found out about 3 years after, but nothing that would cause any death or any destruction of the trains, for sure.
Now, let's go to this clip we have here from the paper. It says, it's the last passenger train stopped October 24th, 1959, and I'll stop there because then you can tell me what the rest of it is all about. What's the significance of this?
Well, that's when he decided to close up the Humbermouth station. The traffic and the freight consignment and everything that goes with it wasn't required there at that time. It all went to Cornerbrook. So they made a decision to close the station, and the last passenger train to stop at Humbermouth Station was on Saturday, October the 24th, and Sunday, October the 25th, 1959, the station was officially closed.
You know, in the scheme of things, that's not all that too far back. We're talking almost
Sure.
1960,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
I kind of figured from all the stories that we've heard that Humbermouth disappeared a long time before that, but it didn't. So
last week you had Kevin McCarthy on, and Kevin was mentioning about his father. There was the freight shed foreman, and he retired. Because when his father retired, the assistant operator in Humbermouth Station was Ross Bartlett, and Ross figured he had no job, but shortly after that he was appointed as shed foreman to replace George McCarthy.
Mm-hmm. And nowadays, with the thing being rebuilt and the part of the station house being put back, and with the road, the new arterial route going through in Humbermouth, I think a lot more people are going to see the old trains, and, and it's going to be the best thing ever happened to you.
That waterfront road, yes, it's a good thing.
It's going to put you right in the middle of things instead of being down out of the way like it was before.
Too bad we didn't have more equipment, that's all.
Yeah. Now, what's this picture? Tell me about this guy.
That picture, that's Lorenzo Stevenson. He's deceased, but Lorenzo was a fine engineer. And the story I'm trying to tell here is that would be the transition from the steam locomotives to the diesel locomotives. That train can haul 100 cars with 5 locomotives, but the whole operation is controlled by one man. As opposed to steam engines, if you want to do the same thing, you would have to have 5 locomotives, 5 engineers, and 5 locomotive firemen. So you need 10 men. So that one man can do the work of 10 men.
So
after he made that transition.
When you hooked up these diesels, they just ran in parallel and one controlled the
They were
work?
all remote control through one to the other. One movement of anything he moves there controls the whole other 4.
Now, we call that progress, but for a lot of people,
at the time
they don't want to accept it. Right. Well, believe it or not, we're halfway through what we started out to do. We've still got a lot of photographs to go through, and we've got some equipment to talk about. You were going to put that on for me before we just took our break here. So
before we take the break,
yeah, just put that cap on, and we'll get a shot of you there. And
I'm working on the Newfoundland Railway.
Okay, the Newfoundland Railway. And when we come back, you've got another one where we'll find out the significance of that. So we'll take a short break, and then we'll return with our Railroaders program.